What's up, my comic comrades? Today we're taking a look at King and Black Symbiote Spider-Man, because who doesn't like black costume Spider-Man? We're going to be covering issues 1 and 2 today. Yes, I know both issues have been out for a little while now, but as there's been so many awesome titles seemingly being released at the same time lately, it's hard to cover all of them exactly when they're released. But as they say, better late than never. What's also really cool about this miniseries is that yes, it's a King and Black tie-in, but it takes place years ago, specifically shortly after the events of the First Secret War, when Spider-Man got his black costume. Literally at this point, he doesn't even know his costume is a symbiote. He still thinks it was a costume created by alien technology. Anyway, we're about to learn one of Noel's earliest attempts to birth life in the form of the darkness of non-creation. Issue 1 starts off in the Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane. We see Alistair Smythe's father come in waking him up. Alistair then wakes up saying, "Dad, but you're dead." He then answers, "Yes, he is. I'm not actually him. This is just a less intimidating form." Whoever is impersonating Alistair's father then says, "Do you remember Lewis Tuttle? He thought very highly of you. He was my previous host." Alistair then says, "Host?" His fake dad then replies, "I can't exist in this form without one. Unfortunately, he got incinerated. Anyway, that's where you come in." Alistair then looks at him saying, "You need a host?" This thing impersonating his dad then says, "Bingo. That's a word, right? Bingo?" Alistair's all like, "It's a word, yes." Long story short, this thing tells Alistair this facility has quite a laboratory. Seems insane criminals are most popular to experiment on. He continues to say, "I can gain you access to it. I can make you walk again. You just need to whip up a formula and inject yourself. I'll give you the specifics. Then introduce it into the clinic's ventilation system." Alistair says, "That's all?" And this thing impersonating his dad says, "That's all." And with that, they have a deal, and Alistair becomes its new host. We are then taken to the moon where we see one of the Watchers. He's basically saying sometimes he despises his ability to see everything, especially when there's nothing he can do about it. He also tells us that once his race had a name, but it's long forgotten now. He goes on to basically give an origin of sorts of his race, saying the humans once upon a time called the Watchers fallen angels, but they have since named themselves after their function, which is why they call themselves Watchers. This Watcher continues to say there's so much going on down there on Earth. They obsess about everything that is irrelevant and ignore that which is vital. I see it all. There is nothing that escapes my vision. Moments after this, the Watcher gets abducted by an alien ship, and like all generic style, by a beam straight up sucking him up by the chest. And all the Watcher says is, "This is most odd. I didn't see this coming. I am unable to move. Time has stopped around me. This should prove interesting." We are then taken to New York City, where our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man saves a boy from getting hit by a car who is running into the middle of the street to grab his balloon. The mom then grabs and tells the boy, "Never run from mommy, ever." "Who saved you?" The boy replies, "Daredevil," which not only makes me laugh, it also made Spider-Man laugh, saying, "Yeah, that figures. Do something nice and somebody else gets the credit." Anyway, we are then taken to the Daily Bugle, where J. Jonah Jameson is yet again yelling at Parker, telling him to go with Ned Leeds to the Ravencroft Institute. Because apparently Alistair Smythe wants to talk. He wanted to talk to Jonah, but Jonah is sending Ned and Peter instead. But when Ned and Jonah tell him this, Peter's all like, "The Spider Slayer guy?" And Ned tells him, "The very same." Peter then tells Ned, so he's a supervillain trying to fix his public image? Ned says, "Seems so." To which Peter says, "Good, because that always ends well." Peter then tells himself, actually, who knows, maybe it will. Perhaps he really does want to reform. You never really know with bad guys. Sometimes you just have to wait and watch. Elsewhere, we see who abducted the Watcher, and it's none other than Kang the Conqueror. As Kang starts talking to the Watcher, we find out it's none other than Uatu. He tells Kang, "I know who you are, Kang the Conqueror, occasional enemies of the Avengers, time-traveling despot. If I left anything out, I do apologize." Kang says, "Watchers are so polite. Do you know why I captured you?" Uatu then tells him, "No, I don't have any offensive capabilities, so no, not really." Kang then tells him, "You have been observing humanity for thousands of years. You possess knowledge it would require lifetimes for me to learn." Uatu says, "And you really shouldn't be wasting time here." Kang tells him, "It's hardly a waste. I'm going to extract your knowledge, feed it into my computer, then I could survey it at my leisure." We then learn that Kang is doing all this because he's endeavoring to save the universe. But as Kang is doing this, the Watcher tells himself, "Fool, blind fool. All he's doing is providing me inroads to his ship's AI. He is unaware of my psionic power. Instead of draining all of my knowledge, I am absorbing all of his." But while doing this, the Watcher sees the future and sees what Kang saw, and apparently it sees the Watcher as well. At this point, whatever Uatu connected to causes the systems on Kang's ship to overload, at which point Kang says, "Of course, you try to save the universe, and this is what happens," as his ship blows up, causing Kang to float in space while saying, "Fabulous." Back at Ravencroft, we see that Alistair has done what the being possessing him wanted him to do, whip up a formula so that he could walk again, but also introduce it into the clinic's ventilation system. Of course, this is very bad for everyone who's inside of the clinic, and it starts choking Monica, who's right there with him, right off the bat. Elsewhere, Peter's spider sense starts going off as he looks up and sees an eclipse. A solar eclipse, which he says, "They're not like tornadoes. That just doesn't happen." Why? Back at Ravencroft, Alistair looks at the eclipse and says, "Glorious, isn't it? It's a display of the Shadow Realm. As matters progress in the future, it ripples back to the past. History rewrites itself. Or did you just think creation only ran one way?" We then see that Monica is being transformed into some sort of shadow figure, to which Alistair says, "Trust me, you look far better this way." But it's not only doing that to her, whatever you put in the ventilation system is also doing that to everyone breathing in the stuff. On the next page, we see Peter make his way to Ravencroft, where he's greeted by several shadowy figures, to which he says, "Oh, this is not good," as he starts fighting some shadows. Oh, and did I forget to mention that Ned Leeds got there before Peter and he was turned into a shadowy figure? Yeah, because that happened. Because of this, Spider-Man is pulling his punches so he doesn't do too much damage because Ned is still in there somewhere. But when he punches Ned, Peter says to himself, he looks surprised. Wonder why? Not exactly the best time to quiz him on it though, as a bunch of shadows start chasing him into an elevator shaft. After barely just escaping the shadows in the elevator shaft, Peter is able to pry open one of the elevator doors, jumping into a room. When he looks up, he says, "Smythe, I knew it." But Smythe just looks back at him saying, "Not Smythe, I am Mr. E," which is crazy. Now, a good amount of you are like, Arris, why is that crazy? That's actually a pretty crappy villain name. Well, longtime Marvel/Spider-Man fans know that Mr. E is from the Shadowverse, a character that first appeared in Marvel Spotlight issue 9 in November of 1980. And now, 40 years later, they're tying him to Null. Brilliant. I love when comics do that stuff. But of course, once Smythe says, "I'm Mr. E," Spider-Man has to make a joke saying, "Boy, Mr. E, not Mystery Man, not Major Mystery, Mr. E, I don't even know where to start." But after this, Mr. E just says, "You." Spider-Man's like, "Right, me." At which point, Mr. E goes in to hug Spider-Man saying, "Brother." But Spider-Man doesn't want to hug and punches him away. Mr. E then grabs Spider-Man saying, "Why in the world did you do that, brother? We're on the same side. We both serve our God." Now again, at this point in time, Spider-Man doesn't know he's wearing a symbiote, but Mr. E does, which is why he's calling him brother, because they're both children of Null. So it's just really cool to see how Mystery is confused to why Spider-Man is wearing a symbiote and fighting him as their brothers, but also how Peter has no idea what the heck he's talking about because he doesn't even know he's wearing a symbiote. Anyway, the two continue to fight and Spider-Man punches Mystery again, but his fist goes right through him. Mystery then says, "Sorry, brother, you don't catch me off guard twice." Mystery then starts saying, "Why are you doing this?" And Spider-Man tells him, "Well, it's kind of expected with you being a bad guy and all." Mystery then tells him, "Me, the bad guy? We represent the natural order. Our people were there at the beginning. We shall continue to exist at the end. Humanity is nothing but a cosmic blip in the universe. You should know that." At which point, Mystery then throws Spider-Man back. Peter then says, "Concentrate. Come on, Parker. Focus on hitting him. Focus." Peter then says, "Wait, when I hit Shadow Ned, he looked surprised. He wasn't expecting it. He must have thought I'd go right through him just like I did with Mystery. And I wasn't thinking about it. I just did it." At this point, Peter realizes he just has to let his mind relax and let his spider sense guide him, which he does and then punches Mystery into a wall. But as Mystery is about to get back up, a sword comes flying out of nowhere, piercing him. And we see on the next page, it's Black Knight, who says, "I was just flying by. I thought I could be of some help." Spider-Man then says, "Black Knight, what are you doing here?" He replies, "Saving the day. It's what we do." As the two are talking, Mystery gets away, to which Spider-Man says, "Now what?" And Black Knight tells him, "I'm not sure. Hopefully the answer is out there somewhere." Then on the next page, we see that Kang is picked up by a spaceship in space. And once he boards the ship, we see it's none other than Rocket Raccoon saying, "Welcome aboard. I'm the captain and crew. Name is Rocket. Who the hell are you?" As the comic ends. The beginning of issue 2 opens up with Spider-Man and Black Knight still in front of Ravencroft, where Spider-Man says to himself, "It has been a day. Weird shadow creatures invade Ravencroft, one snatches Ned Leeds, the sun eclipsed for no reason, and the only Avenger to help me is the Black Knight. A latter-day Don Quixote with a sword and an attitude." Anyway, as the two are talking, Spider-Man finds out that the Black Knight came here because Merlin told him to. Spider-Man is like, "Merlin? Like the magician?" Black Knight says, "That's correct." Spider-Man just says, "Did he appear out of nowhere?" And as Black Knight's about to answer him, Merlin appears behind him saying, "Yes." Startling Spider-Man. Merlin says, "I do apologize if I startled you." And Spider-Man says, "If, God, so that's what it feels like when your heart skips a beat." Merlin then tells the Black Knight, "Matters are progressing extremely rapidly. I couldn't wait to come to you in your sleep again. You must return to the mansion immediately. Your presence is required there." Merlin then tells Spider-Man, "And you must return to the newspaper, aka the Daily Bugle, because the shadow you called Ned Leeds is heading there to dispatch its owner." Elsewhere, we see Ned Leeds trying to fight the shadow creature that's possessing him, saying he doesn't want to kill Jonah, but the shadow tells Ned, "Denial will get you nowhere. Now hold still. There. That's better." As the shadow takes over Ned again. Meanwhile, inside the Daily Bugle, Betty Brant tells Jameson that he's running late for his editorial meeting. But he just tells her, "I'm never late. It starts when I get there. One of the advantages when you're in charge." But as Jonah's walking towards her, putting on his coat, he sees a terrified look on her face, and he says, "You look like you just saw a ghost." And on the next page, we see Shadow Ned crash through Jonah's window saying, "Hi, Jonah. let's talk. Jonah then obviously starts running away, while the shadow creature says, where are you going, Jonah? We have so much to catch up on. Jonah then starts running down a staircase saying, I don't know what happened, but somehow I know it's Spider-Man's fault. We then see Ned corner Jonah on the stairs saying, that's always your excuse for everything, isn't it, Jonah? Every crappy thing you do, everything that happens, you always blame Spider-Man, even though he saves you countless times. Too bad he's not here to rescue you this time, and when we turn the page, we see Spider-Man crashing through the window, coming to save Jonah yet again, to which Jonah just replies, I'm billing you for that skylight, Spider-Man. Good old Jonah. Back at the Avengers Mansion, Merlin tells Black Knight about the great evil abroad and that the Black Knight's ebony blade is one of the only weapons in existence that can defeat it. Merlin then tells Black Knight said evil is called Null. His followers simply call him God. He is a creator of immense power and possesses a threat to all of time and space. At present, he is contained, but one day that containment will end and he will roam free, leaving destruction in his wake. And as we know, Merlin is 100% correct because in the present time, that is currently what Null is doing to the entire Marvel universe. Merlin then tells Black Knight, give me the sword and I will tend to it. I can increase the magic it already contains and elevate it to the point of being an absolute lethal weapon against him. Then as Black Knight is going to hand the sword over to Merlin, he goes, what's my name? Merlin says, pardon? Black Knight says, you keep calling me Black Knight. What's my real name? Merlin then looks at him saying, very good, revealing he's not Merlin, but in fact, a shadow creature. The shadow creature then disappears and the Black Knight says, show yourself, shadow creature. I said, show yourself, Craven. At which point the shadow creature does, and when it does, it steals Black Knight's sword and impales him with it. He then looks at the Black Knight saying, my followers and I have very specific plans for the blade. Tragically, those plans don't include you. Meanwhile, back at the Daily Bugle, Spider-Man is continuing to fight Shadow Ned. And when Spider-Man throws Shadow Ned into one of the newspaper's machines, he says, shut up. The shadow creature then says, now of course I could stay in this body, and his body wouldn't be harmed by these mechanisms. However, I feel the need to move on. So the shadow creature then ditches Ned's body, leaving him to die, but Spider-Man uses his webbing to save Ned. Ned then tells Spider-Man, I know where it's going. It was inside my head, but I was inside of it as well. Two-way street. You gotta go to Avengers Mansion. Back at Avengers Mansion, we see a dying Black Knight greeted by Kang, who says, found him, and then tells Black Knight, don't move. Black Knight just looks up at him saying, shut up. Rocket Raccoon then shows up saying, what part of don't move don't you get? Black Knight then says to Rocket, oh good, I'm just hallucinating. Was worried for a second as he falls to the ground because obviously seeing a talking raccoon is a little out of the ordinary. Anyway, Rocket then asks Kang, is he dead? I'm not that familiar with humans, so it's kind of hard to tell. Kang then tells him, my sensors indicate no. He's barely hanging on though. Rocket says, good, let's get him out of here before things get worse, as the comic ends. And just like that, my comic comrades, we have issues 1 and 2 of King and Black Symbiote Spider-Man. I'm really digging this miniseries thus far. I love how it takes place in the past, and it's showing us how apparently the Shadowverse has always been Null's children or part of Null. It's clever, and I think by the end of the series, we're gonna see something from here tie into the present, and I can't wait to find out what it is. I am very curious to see what they do with Ebony Black though. Does that become a necro sword of some sort? I don't know. We're gonna have to find out. But as I always say, we wanna know what you think, so let us know in the comments. And that's gonna bring another episode of Variant to a close. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content that we put out every week, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It always helps us out. But I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.